Hi all, and welcome to my UBD unit on the salmon life cycle. As I've noted up here, this unit is designed for students in the primary grades, so first, second, third graders. The essential questions for this unit are: what patterns exist in the natural world? How can those patterns help individuals survive? How are living things connected? And how do scientists share their ideas and observations? Students will leave this unit understanding that all living organisms follow a specific life cycle pattern, and responsible harvest depends upon people's knowledge of that pattern. Students will also understand that all living organisms are impacted by their environment, which might include other organisms. So, for instance, salmon can be severely impacted by the actions of people in their environment. Students will understand that scientists organize and communicate all stages of the learning process, including questions, information, observations. And finally, students will understand that scientists are able to clearly communicate ideas and understand each other's work by focusing on big ideas and putting those ideas in order. Ultimately, students will be able to independently use their learning to plan responsible subsistence harvest using the life cycle patterns of important local organisms. They will be able to locate information in nonfiction books and communicate their thinking using language and technology. Students will develop these essential understandings through acquisition of these skills and this knowledge. As you can see here, this unit addresses several of the Alaska content standards. Obviously, we're going to cover some important life science topics, and as I'll explain shortly, the performance assessment and learning activities also involve a number of writing and language arts skills, such as editing and publishing students' own writing, and communicating using varied tools of electronic technology. And finally, we'll be using technology to share work products and to communicate with one another, so I've listed several relevant NETS standards as well. Here, I've listed all the ways I will gather evidence to show students essential understandings and acquisition of skills in this unit. The main assessment will be a performance task in which students write a story from the perspective of a salmon. Stories will cover the entire salmon life cycle, with attention to various threats the salmon might face during each life cycle stage. I will be using this rubric as a guide to provide feedback prior to publishing, to encourage self-evaluation, and to evaluate and provide comments on students' published work. The expectation is that students will cover all main stages of the salmon life cycle in order, with accurate descriptions and illustration of habitat and threats for each stage. The stories should also make sense and be readable, and have a beginning, middle, and end, as well as a problem during each stage. In addition to the salmon story performance task, students will complete a number of formative assessments in their individual science notebooks. These assessments are linked to classroom activities and include labeled diagrams, reflections, and observations. I will be using this rubric to check completion of open-ended entries in students' journals and offer feedback based on the three variables of accuracy and detail, conventions, and scientific inquiry. These evaluations will give me an idea of whether students are grasping the skills and content knowledge of this unit. At the very end of the unit, students will use their formative assessment activities to create a digital science journal. This final project will require students to self-assess and think critically about their work as they revise and organize. Students will use this rubric to self-assess their science journal pages according to accuracy and detail, conventions, and organization. In this section, I've described the various learning activities that will take place throughout the unit. Basically, we'll start with a general focus on the entire salmon life cycle, and then we'll zoom in on specific stages. Within that first general focus, we'll list what we know and wonder about salmon. We'll do some read-alouds, do various activities surrounding the order and names of different life cycle stages, and then review with a fun video. I'll introduce the salmon story performance task during this time by reading a local author's published book written from the perspective of a salmon. One big specific focus will be the egg stage. During this time, we will visit a spawning stream and actually watch a biologist mix salmon eggs and milt in a classroom incubator tank. Students will begin conducting observations of these fertilized eggs, and they will use a document camera to magnify and diagram an egg and work in small groups to build and test redds, or nests, for sample salmon eggs. As students focus on the early stages of the salmon life cycle, they'll also be writing the corresponding sections of their salmon life cycle stories. We'll continue through the various stages of the salmon life cycle with a particular focus on the anatomy and harvest of adult and spawning salmon. After finishing all 6 sections of their salmon stories, students will practice reading their stories fluently with a partner. I'll scan the students' illustrations and upload those to individual Dropbox folders. After setting up individual laptops, I'll use the smartboard to model opening a Dropbox folder, downloading images, and putting illustrations in order in iMovie. This step will give students a chance to review the sequence of various life cycle stages. Next, students can change the time on each image, and record themselves as they read their stories out loud. Once students have recorded their stories, the finished movies will be exported and then uploaded as attachments on KidBlog. KidBlog is a very simple blogging interface specifically designed for primary classroom use. Once I've posted my movie as an attachment, other people in my class can find it by scrolling down to my post and clicking on the attachment.
Somebody stepped in the creek. They almost stepped on me, but instead they squished some of my brothers and sisters.
After watching my video, my classmates can make comments by scrolling down and typing something in this box. Then they hit submit, and their comment becomes part of my blog thread, so I can read it and everybody else can read it as well. This is a nice way for the kids to collaborate and communicate with each other, especially for those kids who are having trouble with the motor skills of writing. It's a little easier for them to get their ideas out on a keyboard. As I've noted here in my Stage 3 document, when students finish uploading their videos and commenting on each other's work, the unit is almost over. However, we're going to keep observing our salmon that are hatching in the classroom tank, and we'll continue making observations in our science notebooks. When the salmon are finally released in the spring, children will work on digitizing their science notebooks using Microsoft Pages. Once students have edited and revised their work using the self-assessment rubric, I will digitize each page of their science journal and create a Microsoft Pages document in each of their Dropbox folders. Students can open this document and easily organize their science journal pages using the little toolbar over here. When their pages are in order, students can simply click on the first page and then click up here to add a page for their table of contents. If the page doesn't show up in the right spot, they can simply click on it and move it around. So it's a very user-friendly program, even for very young children. To make a table of contents, kids just have to click on Table, and then they can add their headings here. Students can decide how they want to organize their science journal. They may decide to organize it by life cycle stage, or they might find that another method works better for them. Overall, the purpose is that students understand the main idea that scientists need to organize their thoughts in some orderly fashion in order to communicate with others. I can model any steps of this process up on the smartboard for students who need extra support. This concludes my presentation on my UBD unit for the salmon life cycle. Here I just have some acknowledgments of various idea and material sources, a few book and video references, and special thanks to my mentor teacher, Akela Silkman, who offered some feedback and advice on this unit. Thank you for watching.